Today, I talked to a legendary Washington State Cougars quarterback about the current Washington State Cougars quarterback, along with receivers, offense, defense. We break down the game coming up versus Cal this weekend, and it's coming up right now. Hey everybody, welcome to Elite Athletes TV. I'm Mike Pulaski, former 11-year pro quarterback and quarterbacks coach here at EliteAthletesTV.com. Today, we're talking Cal versus Washington State. We're going to break down quarterback play. We're going to give a great tip in terms of what young quarterbacks should be doing to get themselves ready, even in these strange times. And we'll take a look at both teams on both sides of the field, Cal, Washington State, offense, defense. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. If you love football content, you'll love what we do here at EliteAthletesTV.com. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to preview the game and learn about quarterback play, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, your thoughts on the Pac-12, college football, anything quarterback. We're happy to answer any questions that you have as well. Finally, please remember to share this video out. Family, teammates, friends, fans, coaches, anybody who you think can benefit from what we're doing here. We formed EliteAthletesTV.com to help young athletes improve at their game, give them knowledge that they wouldn't get otherwise. Now, let's get to the interview. My guest today, as a signal caller for the Cougs, led Washington State in passing yards, touchdowns, attempts, completions, and total offense. Well, joining me now, former Washington State quarterback, Alex Brink. And I read in the notes that you are the only Wazzu quarterback to win the Apple Cup 3 times. Is that right?
This is true. Yeah.
That's a huge claim to fame in a rivalry game like that.
Well, yeah, and especially with the quarterbacks that have come through on the Washington State side and all that. It's pretty fun. It's a fun one to hang my hat on.
Yeah, well, I got to call a couple of your games. I enjoyed watching you. You're a quarterback's quarterback, and so I appreciate that. And if you haven't listened to a Wazzu broadcast, anybody out there, you should do it, because between Alex and Chaz, they do a fantastic job of breaking down games. So check that out. Right now, let's break down the Cougs, and let's talk about where they're at. Obviously, you go from the most interesting man in college football in Mike Leach to the most interesting man in college football in Nick Rolovich. You have you're so lucky. You get 2 of the most interesting coaches of all time. Talk about Rolo.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it was a little bit by design when AD Pat Chun, hired Nick Rolovich, both from an offensive scheme standpoint, but then a personality standpoint. I mean, he definitely fits in Pullman and with the Washington State fan base. He's a player's coach, so he connects with the kids really well. You saw it right away during the early start of the pandemic when everything shut down, right? He's going around in Pullman and he's buying gift cards from different restaurants, and he's telling people to meet him at the pizza shop. He's buying 20 or 30 pizzas for people because he wants to keep the businesses going. So, he's just got that sort of personality that really connects. And then on top of that, he's a great football mind. He's had a ton of success, particularly offensively at Nevada and Hawaii. So, by all rights, early in his tenure at Washington State, he's been a home run.
And when he came out as a player from college, after I think he got an initial shot in the NFL, but then he was going to go to the Arena League down in San Jose. And he gave me a call. We actually talked all through arena football, kind of X's and O's scheme, the whole 9 yards. And so we have a background there, and I got to hang out with him in Australia. Talk about how his run and shoot system differs from the air raid.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's, the air raid is in its kind of very nature is very black and white. They want to eliminate gray area. There's obviously very few play calls, right? That's a staple of the Mike Leach version of the air raid. They're trying to really make it easy for the quarterback and the receivers, frankly, to make decisions and execute. Where the run and shoot differs is it's very pass heavy. There's no doubt about that. But, as the name suggests, it's run and shoot. So you're going to run the football a little bit more. They had back-to-back 1,000-yard rushers at Hawaii. The other thing is they want to be more vertical. So whereas the air raid wants to go sideline to sideline and create space that way, the run and shoot's gonna throw the ball downfield. Coach Rolovich said before the year he wants to average 12 plus yards of completion, whereas Mike Leach was around 9 or 10. And so far this year, well, up until I guess the USC game last week, they're averaging 12.7, 12.8 yards per completion. So they're going to throw the ball a little more downfield. And then the biggest difference, right, and this gets talked about a fair amount, is the receivers are actually reading coverage and leverage and changing the route based on what they see. So there has to be great synergy between quarterback and receiver, right? They could be running an out route when the play is called in the huddle, and then it might change to an in route when the play is being run. So that can create big plays. It can also create some mistakes at times.
And talk about that SC game last week. Obviously, I don't think it's fair. Washington State hadn't played since November 14th. Is that right? And so you get a 3-week bye in the middle of a season. It makes it kind of tough.
Yeah, I think it's the nature of this season, right? In 2020, you're kind of having, when you talk about not being able to play 2 weeks in a row, you're basically on the buses on the way to the airport to go to Stanford, and then you got to turn around and go back home, and then the Apple Cup gets canceled. And then even leading into this week, USC had their issues with COVID protocols, so that it was up in the air. So, I think it's definitely mentally draining on players and coaches to prep for that. USC is playing great football right now. I mean, they've kind of hit their stride after, some early struggles. Washington State just ran into a buzzsaw, right? Freshman quarterback, a couple early turnovers, some bad field position, and defensively, it's just hard to match up against those receivers. So I think, this week, for sure, the Cougs are hoping for a bounce back. But again, Cal's playing great football, obviously coming off a huge win against Oregon.
And talk to me about that young quarterback, Jaden Dolor. I watched that first game against Oregon State, and immediately I said, this kid's going to be a star in the Pac-12. He is just that gunslinger, get out there, and it may not be the way you design it in the playbook, but he's going to make something happen. He has a sense about making plays.
Yeah, he's kind of got a little new age feel to him in the way that he plays the position. He's definitely really scrappy. He makes plays off schedule. But he'll stand in there and deliver the ball. He's not a huge guy, and he's a true freshman, so he's going to get better as he gets stronger. But he really attacks throws. I mean, when you watch him play, he's not afraid to rip it. He'll go downfield and make plays. Make throws from one hash to the far sideline, and so I love that about him. I think he was a great decision maker through 2 games against Oregon and Oregon State. And then, against USC, he had his struggles early and kind of settled down, which, as you and I both know, right, being a true freshman quarterback, that's just kind of part of the deal. So I think Cougs fans got to kind of ride that wave a little bit. But in the end, I think Washington State has a good one.
And you talked about receivers making adjustments to routes based on leverage as a staple of the run and shoot. I ran it a little bit up in the CFL. I know you played up there as well. And talk about the receivers you guys have, because Renard Bell, Travell Harris, both fantastic wide receivers out there for a young quarterback.
Yeah, a big difference too in the air raid and the run and shoot is that the air raid, you're going to see 8 or 9 receivers rotate in. The run and shoot, they're going to kind of run out the same 4 or 5 guys throughout the game. So guys like Travell and Renard are going to get a lot more touches than they might in the air raid. And so far, they've been great. I mean, just fantastic in the slot. Actually, what's been interesting is offense coordinator Brian Smith and Coach Rolovich, who obviously has a hand in the offense. They've been finding unique ways to get them the football. Travell Harris has been running some fly sweeps, some sort of kind of receiver trap type of plays, some really creative ways to get those guys the football, and they've been incredibly productive. I think the one thing for Washington State is they need another guy or two to step up. There was a lot of attrition in the offseason. You had a couple guys opt out, a couple guys transfer, some graduation, and so you're kind of left with Renard and Travell and Jameer Calvin, who's coming back off of an injury last season. And you just like to see probably a third or fourth guy step up to create a little bit more depth, for Washington State.
And everybody remembers Max Borge from last year. I believe he's had some injury issues this year. Talk about his status coming into this game.
Yeah, he got banged up early in kind of fall camp and really hasn't. I think last week he got back to practicing a little bit, but I think right now it's still questionable. I know for Max as a competitor, he wants to be out there, right? He wants to go get on the field, and he would be a huge piece of the puzzle for Washington State. I think it's going to be a matter of, kind of what's the risk reward as you head into the last game or two of this shortened season in regards to getting Max on the field.
Right. And 2 games, and it's an automatic red shirt for everybody who applies for it later on with the COVID. So he is one hell of a football player. I believe it was over 800 yards rushing, over 500 yards receiving, and 16 touchdowns. It's a lot of production to miss out on the field.
Yeah, only guy in the country to do that last year, right? It's just pretty impressive. So
instead, Dion McIntosh, 6.9 yards per carry at that running back position.
Yeah, he's actually been a revelation. I think Dion was a guy that out of high school went to Notre Dame and actually played as a freshman or redshirt freshman, I believe. Had almost 500 yards rushing and had a really, one game where he had over 150 yards for Notre Dame. So, he was a guy out of high school that was very highly sought after. He ended up transferring, going to junior college, and then landed at Washington State. And to be honest, I just don't think he was a great fit in the air raid. He's a much more downhill runner. He breaks tackles. Great forward lean. He can catch the ball in the backfield, but his bread and butter is putting his foot in the ground and going north-south. So in the run and shoot, which has, Nick Rolovich has added from his time in Nevada, a little pistol to this where the running back's behind the quarterback in shotgun. he's been very productive. And I think Washington State could even lean on him a little bit more to take some pressure off of Jaden Dolor. So Dion's been great. Excited to see him maybe get going a little bit again here this week.
And it's funny to see how so many offensive coordinators have taken different pieces of different systems and kind of meshed it all together, right? It's like the West Coast. It evolved to about 27 different iterations of the offense. Same thing, run and shoot, air raid. They're all taking some pistol. They're all taking some spread. They've all got different things going on. Talk to me about Jake Dickert, defensive coordinator, changed things up there. First game versus Oregon State, you get 4 sacks. Then you come back, you get 3 takeaways and 4 tackles for loss against Oregon. We'll leave USC out of this picture, but the defense was looking pretty good early on in the season.
Yeah, there was, I think Jake Dickert, who came from Wyoming, who's been a perennial, powerhouse defense, right, in the Mountain West. He comes over and, changed it up a little bit. Washington State was a base odd front, 3-man front with a stand-up rush guy. Coach Dickert wanted to have 4 guys down, the defensive ends with their hand in the dirt to rush the passer, and that paid some dividends early. There has been a little bit of some injury issues on the defensive side of the ball, so you're kind of reacting to that. There's also been some young faces that have stepped in and played really well, particularly in the defensive secondary. True freshman Aiden Hector from the Seattle area came in. He had those three takeaways against Oregon. And then a couple guys at the corner position, Shaw Smith Wade and Jalen Watson, have been really good so far. And so I think that's helped the pass rush. In general, what I noticed with the defense is they just fly to the football. I mean, you don't see a lot of one-on-one tackles. You see 2, 3, 4, 5 hats getting to the ball. And I think that has been a really positive sign for Washington State's defense. They can still be better in the front 7, stopping the run. I think that would be a big piece of it. They showed a little bit of that against USC, had a much better day stopping the run. Problem is, it didn't come with stopping the pass, unfortunately. But, once you tie those together, I think Coach Dickert's a young coordinator. He's going to motivate kids really well. So, I think he's a guy that is only going to help this defense get better.
And yeah, that's all chemistry, right? You start to learn a system. At first, you're just executing assignment until you start to get the nuance and you start to understand where you can kind of freelance within that assignment and become a really good player. That's all new. When you have a new system, you just watch it evolve over the first 2 or 3 years and watch guys get better at it, understanding the chemistry of it. You're a guy who coaches quarterbacks. You were a quarterback at a really high level. A lot of young quarterbacks watch the channel. What's the best advice you can give to young quarterbacks that are out there?
Well, I tell you what, this is a very strange time, when it comes to being able to compete and do things. Some people have seasons, some people don't have seasons. My biggest thing is find ways to perfect your craft that maybe don't have to be on the field. And so, we can all be the best, thrower in the world, right? I call it a driving range quarterback. If you can get out there on the driving range, hit a golf ball, it's not the same as standing over it on the first tee. And so for quarterbacks, what can you do off the field? Can you watch some film? Are you watching football on Sundays or Saturdays? Or are you just playing video games, right? Or are you finding a way to maybe read a book about leadership, maybe tap into some of these really, really powerful speakers and people on the internet, on Twitter, on YouTube, whatever, that are providing some value and helping you out on a personal level. I think this is, again, a challenging time for everybody, young and old. And so I think developing yourself from the neck up is a really valuable tool for young quarterbacks.
It's a huge one. And how are your quarterbacks? Obviously, I'm still working with quarterbacks down here. How are your quarterbacks getting out and working up there? And what are you guys modifying to make that happen?
Yeah, we're still able to do, on-field stuff for the most part. But we've instituted a lot of Zoom meetings where we're going through and we're talking coverages. I have little quizzes for them to make sure that they, they're not just sitting there staring at the screen, that they're engaged, watching film. We'll pull film. I don't know if everybody knows this. You can go to NFLGamePass.com. You can get every all 22 film from the NFL games throughout the year and watch just like a coach would watch those games. It's a really fun tool to jump into. You don't have to have, a Huddle account or an Exos account. So we do a lot of that and try and dive into those sort of things and build the mental side, build the understanding of the game along with our throwing fundamentals.
Such an important part of the game. And a lot of young quarterbacks, we all did it. I loved going out there and throwing. I'm sure you love going out there and throwing. But building that mental game, so important. All you young quarterbacks at home, take that from a legendary Washington State quarterback. Won the Apple Cup 3 times. Remember that. Alex, I appreciate you coming on with us here today. And I look forward to watching the game this weekend.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So great insights from a former great Cougs quarterback and their current analyst. If you enjoyed what we did here today, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. Get notified every time we have new content coming out. Give me a thumbs up if you understand the matchups and a little more about the Cougs, and leave me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you about anything college football, quarterback related, or football related in general. Finally, don't forget to share this video out. Anybody you think we may help, that's our goal here at EliteAthletesTV.com. We want to be the most helpful coaches on the internet, and so that's what we're doing here. If you share it out, you're going to help us help young athletes. I appreciate you watching. Just a couple quarterbacks talking about quarterback play, offense, quarterback training, and football skills. I'll talk to you again soon.